Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I have the opportunity to work on a Quantum Accurist PT. This has a problem that a lot of reels seem to have, particularly bait casters. This one, when you press the release button down, the free spool will release, but it won't trip back. So we're going to go try and figure out what's causing that, and we'll see if we can repair that without any parts. If not, we'll at least complete a problem diagnosis on the reel and go get the parts. And we'll show you what the common setup is for triple lever releases, and how to service them, keep them going. Most of the time that problem occurs because of dirt and dried grease, but sometimes you'll break a trip lever, and if that's the case, that needs to be repaired. Sometimes it's a broken spring, but most of the time it's just dirt and grease, so we'll see. We're going to start by removing the exterior pieces and parts, and as we do, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you like the art of reel service, repair, if you like learning about fishing reels, if you're kind of curious about the manufacturers or the types of reels or the uses and the like, then I'm going to encourage you to subscribe. And if you do subscribe, please use the notification button. That'll let you know when I'm posting, and you'll be able to see if there's a reel out there that you're interested in watching the video on. Well, I'm seeing right away that there's a lot of salt and the like. I'm using that penetrating oil just to kind of dissolve that. And as I take my pieces and parts off, I put them into a parts tray. I use the bottom of a fast food container. I encourage you to have a system for organizing the pieces and parts that you take off of your reel. There's nothing better to do than figure out before you start doing it where you want to put those pieces and parts, so that, well, when it's time to reinstall, you can go back and easily locate them, know the sequence that you took them off, and know where they go on the back end. Well, one of the best ways for me to do that is to take pictures. For example, I know here I have a click mechanism. On the click mechanism, the solid part is facing down, and we have a series of about 3 washers in there. I'm going to nest them right in the cap. I'm going to put them off to the side. What we have left here is a smaller washer. That's going to be a bearing shield type of a washer, and that's going to go underneath that solid click, if I can get it off, and on top of the bearing. Just a very small piece. I'm going to put that one right next to the assembly I just took off, so I can remember that. There's 2 screws on this side. I'm pretty sure that's not going to be the only thing holding this case on. You want to check underneath here, see if you can notice any screws there. And most of the time you're going to find that there's a screw hiding behind the spool on a reel like this, if you only see the 2. But let's take the 2 off. We'll see if the side case comes off or not. I'm going to use a micro driver for this. This is a Phillips head screwdriver. And sometimes your number 1 Phillips head screwdriver will work fine. Sometimes it won't. So I would tell you just have a set on standby just in case you need it. Those are the 2 out. One of the things you want to notice is there are 2 different screws. The long one came from the bottom here. The short one came from this side over here. And the case did not come off. So it's probable that there's at least 1 screw underneath the spool, and we're going to do that by removing the side case. To do that, you push down. This might be a release button here. I think that's a release button on this side. Push down and then pull out, and you have a magnetic side plate with a ball bearing in it. All you need to do on this one is just oil that ball bearing and let it sit. I'll put that into my parts tray to sit. Now we want to remove the spool. Just keep working it. There you go. Eventually it will come out. And judging by this is one dirty reel, and that's probable cause for why the other piece is hanging up. There's all kinds of braid coming off here. It's probably got a little bit too much braid. What I'm going to do is take a rubber band to tie that off, because that braid will get trapped when you go to reinstall. So I'll just use that as the hold down for the braid, And then I'm going to cut some of that braid off there, just to get it out of harm's way as we continue. All right, the spool is in. And now we'll go put that into the parts tray to hold that for a reinstall. And we should find a screw under here now, and we do. And just like everything else I'm noticing, there's a good amount of salt and the like on there. This is used in salt water. So I'm just going to see if a little shot of WD-40 and a screwdriver will help me get that screw out. Looks like we're in luck here. I'm just going to make sure there's not a second screw before I go pulling anything off. I'll use my micro driver. This is a black screw just like the other ones were, so I want to check that. All right, the two, that screw and the one on the bottom over here are the same. Just looking, I don't see another screw there. The side plate should come off now. And there you go. The side plate has come off. And there's no question in my mind that that's not tripping back because of all the salt that's laying on the reel here. Now you want to know the easy answer to this one? Believe it or not, but we're stuck mode. First thing I'm going to do is get rid of these, not get rid of, but put these in a safe place because these little pieces will spring out all over the place if you don't watch it. And you'll see we're turning, but it's not, well, in that case it actually caught it, but you can see the greases and the like. I'm going to pull the main gear off of this if I can. Take pictures now. This is a good place to take the pictures so that if you get stuck on the way back, you're going to be able to have a reference point here. And you're going to need that reference point in case you forgot the sequence that they come off, or the orientation of the part, and so on. This one's got the same issue here. We've got a stack full of salt. That's why it's not sliding up the case easily. But just be patient. Take your time. Work it. I'm just using a razor knife to get underneath there, because that isn't set in the main gear. Try to bring that up. That should clear most of that old salt on that shaft. And you can see there's just a whole bunch of that at issue here. And then we can pull that off. We'll work on that in just a little bit. Here's your click lever. You can see we've got some rust setting in. And what will happen now, you're going to push down on your release button. It's going to come in. And one of the issues here, because of the dirt, is it's not fully setting in there. There's a big gap here, right? We can, if I can find a flat screwdriver, we've got quite a gap in there. It's not moving because of the salt. Well, the easy one, of course, is dissolve the salt. So we're going to use a penetrating oil, and we're going to work that back up and down, up and down, up and down kind of deal. We'll clean it more, but for now, look at how nice and tight that sits, just like that right now, without really doing anything other than just dissolving the dirt. So a lot of times that's exactly what this issue is that dirt has accumulated. It somehow impeded the flow or the function of that piece, and now you got it locked in nice and tight, tripping each time. Well, that one hit the stud the wrong way, but there you go, just like that. Okay, let's continue with the service then. Clearly there's a lot of dirt. I'm going to pull up the trip lever on this one. I'm going to click ratchet, or whatever you want to call it. We're going to remove this shaft here because there's probably a bushing. If there isn't a bushing, we're going to find out what it is. But we're going to remove that. And this is interesting to note on this reel that the line guide is driven from the main gear. You'll see as I turn this, it's going back and forth. When you go to cast this reel, that's going to be disengaged. So this line guide will not be moving back and forth as you're casting. So when you do go to cast, position the line guide right in the center of the structure. That way it's the least line travel to both sides, and the most effective way to get a long cast. We're going to remove this now, see if we got a bearing underneath. We probably do, because it says 7-ball bearings on this reel. And you could get an answer to what's inside the reel. I'm kind of playing along here. I seem to recall doing an Accurist, oh, I don't know, a year ago. So I'm kind of familiar with it. But if you wanted to, and it's often recommended, I recommend it, go ahead and get the schematic for this reel. And that way, that'll tell you if you got a bushing or a bearing underneath here. And, well, we got a bearing. So I just want to clean that up and do the same thing. A lot of the notion behind reel repair is nothing more than cleaning, inspecting, re-lubricating, putting it all back together again, and keeping it running for the next, until the next service. And the next service I recommend is on an annual basis. I don't know, it's been a while since this one's been serviced, but the fellow that brought the reel in said it's also been heavily fished. It's his favorite reel. And actually, I think he's got a trip coming up this weekend, and he asked me if I could somehow get to it, that he would like to take it out on the trip. So I'm using a paper towel to wipe off that salt that we found in there from the on the shaft, and now I'm using a bristled brush. This is a soft brass brush. Can't say that enough. But go ahead and clear those threads so that your star adjuster and handler go on nice and easily. Okay, just oiled it. I oiled it before. Let's oil it again. Doesn't matter. You'll only push the oil out a little bit. Make sure you merge in the teeth with the gear drive. Line up your 2 sections for the screws, which I happen to have left on the table, and then reinstall that. Now that piece did not go into the parts tray because I knew I was just going to do exactly what I did there. Clean it up, put it right back in. You got to be careful if you're leaving these pieces and parts on your table, because it's real easy to sweep them off, and then you're in search mode. And I don't like being in search mode. We got one more here. I'll grab that. I'm going to use a little bit of glue to hold the screw so that I can position it properly, and then we'll tighten it down. Tighten, but do not over tighten screws. Right, that's that side. We noted that we have the click ratchet next, and we have the washer. Let's just clean the debris off of this. Again, the inside, I would say the water has gotten in there and done a real good job of clogging things up. Now on those plastic gears, you do not need to oil or grease them. This is a hard washer that goes on next. This is a relatively low level max drag on this reel. And I would say this one's not operating very well at all. Just keep walking around. Now I'm using the point to break it, but I'm using the dull side to lift it. Oh, there we go. So I don't want to slice it. And I don't want to grab it. I want to do this. There we go. We got it out. All right, we have a bunch of dried grease, oil, sand, and all of the above underneath here. So let's go ahead and grab a cotton swab and knock off what we can of this. Some of that is going to be tarnish. But what I'm going to do is go right back to that brush again and see what I can pull off of that with the brush. And I'm using a paper towel here to transfer what's coming off of that gear onto the paper towel. You can see the residue of all of that. Then you can use your finger as a guide. If it's smooth, it's just tarnish. And that's pretty much what I'm feeling there. I'm just going to use a little bit of steel wool, see if I can't buff that up a little bit more. But you want a clean surface. So with that drag secured to the main gear, there was very limited flexibility or adjustability in the drag. It was all or nothing at all. This one's better. We kept the drag in one piece. We're going to use a grease because it's permeable, use grease to keep that drag washer nice and fresh. And we can install right back in, and now you'll have some function, you'll have some slip. We want to go to the main gear next, do the same thing. We want to unclog the teeth that may have some old greases in there, so we'll use that brush one more time on this piece. And on the back, that's all tarnish. Again, if you like, take a piece of steel wool, buff that down. That doesn't interface with anything, it just looks horrible, but it's not a moving part that is going to engage anything, so not to worry about that. Check the teeth on your main gear, make sure that they're all nice and uniform and clean. Get rid of that. That's dry grease. If you don't have dry grease, just go ahead and use regular fishing grease to do some lubrication with that. You don't need to run out and get the dry grease. And vice versa. If you have dry grease but you don't have fishing reel grease, well, it's in the same family. Go ahead and use the dry grease. But whatever greases you use, please make sure they're designed for fishing reels in the marine environment. Okay, we've got the main gears all greased up. Under here, we'll just make sure that the pressure plate is clean for the drag washer. And we can see two things are going on here. One of them is that the reel needs they need to do a better job of keeping this reel clean after fishing, because a lot of this stuff is just residual after a trip. It hasn't been rinsed out and it's just dried out in the reel, and eventually the reel just said, I can't do this anymore, and stopped because the salt was clogging its path. When you go to reinstall, look for the side that has the ramp. There's a ramp here in this plastic. That's going to face in. And then with the pinion gear, find the one that has the slot. That's going to face in as well. Do the same thing here with your pinion gear. Check all the teeth. Again, make sure that they're nice and uniform and clean. And then give it a good amount of grease there. Find your ramp. Ramp side to the spool. Slotted side to the spool. Yes, oops. Pull the pinion gear out. That's not a good idea. Let's go back and put it back together again. Let's try putting that back in. If that was off camera, I apologize. And then make sure you're seated so that the corresponding ramps on the lever that's going to set it and release it is good. That needs to square up. Now we can go ahead and reinstall the main gear. Bring that all the way down, merge that in, and make sure it's all the way on. And I believe we're all the way on with this. And before you put the cover back on and the springs, you can test it right now. See how much more that's moved? You don't even see that any longer. And it fires right back up. Because it hadn't been oiled in a while, I'm just going to soak it with oil. It's not going to go anywhere. It'll drip out of the case if anything. But don't be afraid to lubricate all of this, just because we know that it was kind of overloaded. This is your trip flipper lever, I guess. If for somehow that became disconnected, there's your picture. If you were looking at this one, the spring goes in the bottom here and under the assembly here, and that assembly is sitting on a post. You do not need to take that off as part of the routine service. Well, I just checked my parts tray. I always like to leave these springs behind for some reason. This time around, it's not a gotcha. I remembered them. We'll do that. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to put the collar on for the anti-reverse. Now on that anti-reverse, it's a friction-driven device. You do not need, nor should you, oil that anti-reverse clutch. That would be right here. All you want to do is what we're going to do here. We want to clean up the inside of this because I'm still feeling a little bit of sand. So get the old greases off the case. And here's where I will not use the penetrating oil to kind of loosen it up, because, well, it can seep into that clutch and then it'll lose its grip and it won't be as effective. So there's a bearing up top here where the spool is going to ride in. I'm going to oil that. I'm going to use a cotton swab to clean out the inner of the clutch, but I'm not going to oil that. And now we have a clean case that we can reinstall. My case is going to go, where's the flipper switch? Here's the flipper switch. Good, always a good point. This is going to come through the bearing here. This is going to go there. So kind of line that up as you work it through. You may pop a bearing out. That's okay. I'd say we did pretty good there. Everything kind of went back together again. Nice. I'm going to take the 2 screws that I took out first to close this case up. The long one goes on the bottom, the short one up top. I guess this is a good time to pause. If you have any questions on this reel or any reel, if you maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, maybe you have a problem like this where you can't get the free spool to trip, the best thing to do is leave a question in the comment section. You can use this comment section. You have to go searching for your reel or that. So use a question in the comment section. I do try to answer the questions in the morning, and if I can help you out, I will. All right, there's just a little bit of dirt inside here. And I think before I go much further, I'm going to take that pawl cover off. We'll inspect the pawl. We'll re-lubricate it, and we'll make sure that the line guide assembly works okay. Sometimes if you just tap down gently, you'll be able to move that pawl out. Sometimes you gotta do a little bit more. There we go. And I generally use things like micro pliers and the like. Kind of help me with that. And well, this one is nice and clean, which is a little bit of a surprise to me, given that we've seen a lot of issues with the salt buildup in the other pieces. A little bit of oil into the slot, a little bit of oil onto the worm gear on both sides. Reinstall the pawl. Once you get it started, just go ahead and push that in, and then turn the device, the handle, and that will eventually push that down when it seats into the track. There you go, I felt it there. When you do that, go ahead and get that little washer that was sitting on your table. That little washer belongs over the top, like that. Get the cap. And this is where big fingers don't work well, but we're going to do. Once you have that seated, go ahead and use a screwdriver to tighten it down the rest of the way. Don't over tighten it. This is a plastic one. It can shatter pretty easily if you over tighten. Just snug it up and then give it a test. Make sure that it's riding back and forth the way it's supposed to, which is what this is doing. Okay, we have one more screw in my parts tray here that belongs on the inside to hold the side plate. That goes up top here, so make sure you put that back in. While you have it open, it doesn't hurt to put a little bit of oil onto both sides where this thumb bar is going to ride. Let's grab the spool now. We want to make sure that the shaft and the bearing is cleaned off as best we can. Let's oil the bearing, and we can reinstall. That rubber band that we put on there should hold this nice and tight now. Okay, we're in on that. Let's take the side plate cover then. Firmly seat that and press up. That'll lock that in. And now we're back to reinstalling the exterior pieces. First thing we said was there's a bearing shield and a little bit of brain freeze here. I'm not quite sure I oiled that bearing, so let's do that. And that little bearing retainer washer. I have the spool adjuster cap. It's a good time to put that on. That's going to enable you to free spool, adjust the speed on that. Now we have the click mechanism and the tension washers. I put them in upside down. And first in then would be the click ratchet. You have two washers that are concave. They have a crescent shape to them. Don't flatten them out. I like to put the bowl facing up on the first and down on the second. You can't put it incorrectly, but it will matter in terms of sensitivity, in terms of the star adjuster. Next up then is that star adjuster. Make sure you thread this nice and evenly as you do this. Tighten that down, and when you get down to the bottom here, just as it happens, you'll see that that thing is starting to wedge onto the side plate. So just push it in with the screwdriver and make sure it gets seated underneath. That's all that needs to be done there. Tighten it down the rest of the way, get it out of the way so you can install the handle. The next up is a little tension washer that goes between the star adjuster and the handle. Then we have the handle. Now, I made a mistake the other day and put the handle on the wrong slot or notch or whatever. This one's pretty easy because you can see the corrosion and the like that has occurred on this handle. But take a picture and notice it. Of course, if it's your reel, you know how you want it, but if you're servicing somebody else's reel, you don't. So make sure that you note which one is which, because it can be on two different settings here. Sometimes there's only one, it's easy, but in this case there's two separate settings. Just note which one it was on so that when you return it to the customer, it's correct. And one of our viewers was watching one on the pen clash that I did and said, hey, you know what, you put it on the wrong side. No, I did. That was a gotcha. I'm usually pretty good about that, but that time I wasn't. All right. So what I did there was I put that little nut retention on. Didn't have it quite lined up with the hole, so I just left it on there and was able to grab the nut to put this back on. Well, we're almost ready for a test. We're going to tighten this one down. Let's get some of these tools off the bench here. And we'll give it a test, see how we did. This is the Quantum Accurist PTI, and it's a nice reel overall. Turns nice and free and easy. Let's go into free spool. And again, if you want to loosen that, you want it to spin more freely, back that off in a counterclockwise manner. If you want it to spin less, tighten it clockwise. And you'd need to adjust that each time depending on the weight of the lure or the line that you're throwing in order to minimize backlash. That's not a set it and forget it setting there. It changes as you change your use with the reel. We should be able to see that fire up now. Look at that. And I can probably do that 10 times or 20 times depending on how many times you want to do it. And we saw the cause of that. It was just it was a spool click that was loaded in salt, and that impeded the operation of the assembly. All good now, and Chuck can take that fishing. So I hope you've enjoyed that. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do to keep us safe. Your efforts truly are appreciated. Everybody, take care of your reels. Give them an annual servicing at a minimum. If you identify a problem, don't fish through it. Set it aside and fix it as soon as you're done. What we learned here today, rinse your reels off after you use them. Doesn't matter fresh water or salt water, but if you're in salt water for sure, that's a step that can't be avoided at the end of the day, no matter how tired or in a hurry you are. take the reel off, immerse it in the bucket of fresh water, or hose it down. Whatever your method is, just keep it clean, and it'll keep fishing for you. So enjoy your day, take a friend fishing, and have a great day. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle.